Welcome to the Empower Series Online. My name is Clifton Johnson. I'm the founder of the Empower Series Incorporated, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization brought to you by the generous donations of Comerica Bank, AE Media Group, and you, our viewers in the United States and around the world. If you want to find out more about the Empower Series, definitely check us out on our social media accounts. We're on everything. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You're on YouTube right now, so definitely like us while you're here, share us, make comments. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe and hit the little button, the bell, where you'll be notified the next time we upload our programs. And you can also check us out on our website. Right now, you're seeing our website on the screen. It's www.empowerseries.com. You can go there and find out how we give hope, inspiration, education, and we connect you to the critical resources to help you achieve your goal. If you want to make a donation, you can hit the donate button in the top left-hand corner, or you can text give or donate to 214-225-6337, and that's on the screen right now. You can text give or donate to 214-225-6337. Your donations and involvement in any way is greatly appreciated. October is National Estate Planning Awareness Month. Now, I would tell you that every month is a time to plan for estate planning, and time is now. Like, if you haven't started, you should have started yesterday. It is so important because during this month and at every time, we want to make sure that we are stressing the importance of estate planning and ensuring that everyone has a plan and also keeps it current. Also, it's really important to make sure that we're organized and we're not leaving a mess behind for our loved ones to go through at the same time that they're going through the grief of losing a loved one. Today, we're going to discuss organizing our lives for death, things to do before we die. Doesn't sound happy and fun, but it's important. And we're going to talk about steps that we should follow to putting together an estate plan that meets our goals, how to organize our lives to not leave a mess behind for our loved ones to go through, and how we can use no cost or even low cost resources when we are on a budget or have no budget when it comes to estate planning. Our Empower Series guest today is attorney Lori Perlman. She is the Special Counsel for Falcon Rappaport Berkman PLLC. Her areas of practice are wills, trusts, and estate litigation for private clients. She has over 27 years of experience providing legal advice and services to individuals and fiduciaries, primarily in connection with estate conflict resolution and surrogate court proceedings. Throughout her career, Lori has helped families resolve estate-related disputes, sometimes through negotiations, other times through litigation where negotiations failed. She has also negotiated and drafted contested marital agreements, that's prenuptial and post-prenuptial agreements, complex wills and trusts, including special needs trust, and has provided counsel to law firms that require specialized knowledge of surrogate court procedures. Before we get into the details of our program, it's important to let you know the information provided in this program and below the video in the description section of this YouTube channel do not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and materials available on this program and this YouTube channel are for general informational purposes only. It may not constitute the most up-to-date legal or other information. The links to other third-party websites are only for the convenience of the reader, user, or browser. You should contact an attorney to obtain advice with respect to any legal matter. No one should act or refrain from acting based on information shared without first seeking legal advice from counsel in the relevant jurisdiction. Only your individual attorney can provide assurances that the information contained herein and your interpretation of it is applicable and appropriate for your situation. So, with all of that being said, Lori, welcome to the Empower Series.
Thank you very much for having me.
So it's kind of interesting the way we met. I was looking on the website and I saw this article, and I have to read the title of this article and get it right. The article was Organizing Your Life for Your Death, 5 Things to Do Before You Die. That is such a awakening, shocking title. How did you come up with that?
Well, I really wanted to make it a little bit shocking because people don't pay attention to, there's so much noise on the internet, and people often do a lot of even estate planning, and the best plans can go awry by not communicating and not providing the information to your heirs and family about where you can find things. As an example, I have an estate right now of someone who was fairly young who passed away in California, and his brother is going to be administering his estate. And his brother's pretty sure he has digital assets, but his computer is locked and his phone is locked. And without passwords to those two items, there's no way that he's going to be able to recover those digital assets and find out where they are. So it's very important to plan, as much as you're planning for your estate, to plan for your family to find where those assets are.
Well, I'll tell you, we probably all have personal experiences where it's really during the time of grieving, trying to go through a bunch of documents, legal documents, and it's just a mess, to be.
And it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. This is really, sort of a gift to your family, having everything organized.
That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about my kids now, who they're kids, they're adults. But when I look around and say, can someone step in and easily get to what they need to have to really get my will, my power of attorney, my medical power of attorney, my physician directive, all of those documents. You can have all those documents, but if you're not organized like your article addresses, it's still very, very confusing. But before we get into this, I do want to kind of talk about, before we get into organizing all of these documents, it's important to have documents. So what would you say first about just estate planning in general and having all of the documents that need to be had, just in summary?
Well, I think what you need to know is that if you don't have an estate plan, the state that you live in has one for you. So if you have kids, you may expect that your money is going to be able to be used to support your kids. But most states want to protect money that's left for kids when there's no will. So they're going to require parents or the surviving parent to appoint a property guardian. And that property guardian is not going to be able to just take that money. That money's going to have to be deposited either jointly with the court or with a bank. And every time you want money to come out of that bank account, you're going to have to request from the court permission to use money and show that you cannot meet your parental support obligation without taking the child's money. So, and I worked in the surrogates court in New York, and I saw a judge with an application for money for a computer and for sneakers for a boy who was in high school. And I'm sure any parent of a boy knows how quick they go through shoes. That's a 6-month expense. And she's questioning, why does he need sneakers again? And why does he need a computer? Well, he's in high school and we're in a technology age. So you really don't want the court making those decisions. You want to leave your estate the way you want to. So my feeling is that at any price point, and I'll be talking about that later, it's not a bad idea to have a will. And the other documents that come with it, and I also will be talking about those later, are a healthcare proxy and a power of attorney. Now, those documents are documents that help you during your lifetime because they help for when you're incapacitated, as opposed to when you have passed on. But without those documents, you don't have someone who can help you pay your bills if you're in the hospital. If you're not conscious, you want someone to know what your plan was. Did you want to be on artificial nutrition and hydration? Did you want all measures to be taken no matter what? Or if you're unfortunately brain dead, do you want life support to be terminated? These are all things that most people have an opinion on, but we all think we're invincible. So we're not necessarily going to be planning for that. But those documents really are quite important.
Well, like you said, before we end our conversation, we would definitely talk about those documents. We'll talk about probate. We'll talk about the process of estate planning for people who may not have the resources to pay for an expensive attorney like yourself. Or just an attorney.
I wouldn't say that expensive, but
Right. But what I want to do is I want to go through this article and the 5 things that you're saying that anybody can do to organize their life, which doesn't cost money at all. It just takes discipline.
It's just time. A little bit of time.
Exactly. So step us through the 5 things that we must do to organize our lives before we die.
Sure. And I do want to say, if only we could organize all of our life before we die, that would be great. This information is available in the news section on my website. If you look under private clients and scroll down, you can get this list, copy and paste it and print it so that you have a guideline for yourself.
Yeah, I'd also like to say that there are links below the video that you can access to get additional information as well, because we don't have time to go through everything.
Right. Great. So the first thing that you can do is make a list of your assets. Make an asset notebook. If you have bank accounts, financial accounts, real property, a co-op, jewelry that you want to go to someplace, to a specific person, make a list of all these things. Keep this list someplace that's accessible. One of the things that I hear people say, oh, but if I keep all of this stuff here, if someone breaks in, they have all of my stuff. Yeah. Well, really, imagine someone breaking into a house and sitting down at a computer and starting opening drawers and looking through files. That's not what they do. They're there to grab the valuable things. They're not there to look through your property. If you have someone who's regularly in the house, like a healthcare aide, maybe there's more of a concern, but you can always get, I do a lot of thrifting at Goodwill. You can always get a lockbox, on a good day from Goodwill and lock your important documents in it and tell someone where the key is. But that really is the first thing. You can put this in a binder. You can use a program like mint.com that would list where your financial assets are, or you can put it in a Word document. The key is communicating to someone where that information is. I have a relative who has everything in a file on their computer. It's on their desktop and it's info, and you just click on that and there you go. So you may also...
Let's talk about what that is. So making a list of all of your assets, this is all of your stuff. So that means your personal property possibly as well?
Well, I was going to say, you can make a list of things that you want to go to people. Mm-hmm. If you're not making a will, that at least tells people that what you wanted. Whether or not they honor it is another thing, but at least they have an understanding of what you wanted to do and what your plan was.
Okay, and then for your different accounts, financial accounts, it's not just listing, I have a 401k, it's listing the information about where is your 401k, what's the financial...
So you're going to, the name of the financial institution, the account number, and if you want to go the extra mile, make an actual binder with folders, like that crazy list that picture that I have of an attorney binder with lots of folders in it. You can put a statement from each account in that binder. And that provides even more information. You can update it once a year. That provides the person with the contact information for the financial institution. So they'll just have to call up and be able to say, I'm the executor of this estate, or I'm the administrator of this estate. How do I collect this account into the estate? You really, really want to do better than that. You can start putting documents into that binder that you would need. Keep your power of attorney there, your healthcare proxy, your living will. Sometimes they call them an advance directive. You can keep a copy of your will, passports, addresses and phone numbers of the hospitals of your choice, doctors' names, identify your real property. You know, if you own a home, maybe put a copy of the deed or the original deed there. Mm-hmm. Copies of your car title, all the things that someone would need to transfer those assets. If you have an asset, it has to be transferred to somebody else. And the way to do that, unfortunately, is through a lot of paperwork.
Okay, so how about this? Because I know there was a time where I took care of the personal finances of my mother-in-law, who was just not able to keep track with all of her bills and things of that nature. So I think maybe under this section is to list all of the bills that you have that you pay, possibly, and do you write a check for them? Are they auto draft? Because if someone has to step in, and for example, if I wasn't able to come home, I got into an accident, and then my daughter or son had to come into my home, and for 30 to 60 days, I was out of pocket. They would have to keep current on my bills. So
absolutely.
So am I organized to the extent to where someone can pick up a book and see all of the bills that I pay, when they're due, and how I pay them, right?
Absolutely. It's a fabulous idea. I'm doing this for my dad right now. And let me tell you, it's a chore. It is a chore. I get his mail once a month, and there's a lot of stuff to go through. So absolutely, having a roadmap would be a fantastic savings if someone is not able to take care of themselves.
And again, there's a list of all of the examples that you gave that's going to be available below the video so people can see it. And they're actually seeing some of this stuff on the screen too.
Okay, great. So the second thing that you can do, once you have provided your survivors with all of this information, is how do you access it? As I said, there are some websites and accounts that require passwords, double authentication these days. So you would need to get into a phone to access a bank account. All of that's going to require that person to be able to access your phone, your computer, and be able to get into whatever website you're looking at. So I have this lovely handy dandy book. It looks like an address book on the inside, except that it has a place for the name. Ooh, you can't see that on my thing. The name, the address, the website, the password, and your username. Oh. And certainly this does not look like something that somebody's going to steal. It's just it's my estate planning little black book. Right. So put that someplace where people will be able to find it and let people know where it is. Again, you can have a password minder. Google has them automatically. My phone automatically saves passwords. But if people don't know how to get into your phone and people don't know how to get into your password, they can't find Fastlane or whatever you choose to use to keep your passwords. One thing that's been overlooked in the last 10 years or so, we're slowly getting up to gear, is what do I do with my social media accounts? Even my mom she's on Facebook all the time. She's not on Instagram, but very often people have multiple social media sites that they participate and are active in. Mm-hmm. Facebook has something where if they learn that you have passed, they'll make a memorial page. Okay. But do you want someone to access those accounts and close them out? Do you want someone to be able to access them and clean them up, or take down photos and print them out because they'd love to see everything on your Instagram account? So again, making a direction either in your will or in that asset binder or folder, and let people know what you want to do with your accounts. In some cases, if you can even provide a specific executor for your social media and digital assets. So that is something to consider.
So it's also interesting because your step number 2 was to have a password book. And then step number 3 is to have some instructions for your social media. Social media has passwords as well. So when you look at if you look at all of the different websites, whether it's bill, service related, or social media, there's a ton of websites that have a unique user ID and password.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in some cases, if you don't write down what your wishes are, the social, when you click that okay on terms and conditions, you're accepting what somebody else wants for you, as opposed to what you may want for yourself.
Right.
So these are things to look into.
All right. So we've got a book of assets, everything that we have, the important stuff. We have keeping a passbook record, and then having some instructions for social media accounts. And then that's 3. What's the 4th one? The 4th step?
The 4th one is to make a family tree. Now, this is not as important when your nuclear family is mom, dad, kids. When you get beyond that, you may have your, the non-traditional family where everyone has these days. So this makes it easier for your family if they're going to have to go through probate or administration. Because one thing that a court's going to require is, before they give anyone authority over your assets, all of your people who are your intestate heirs need to get notice. They need to get notice of the person who claims that they're your relative, they're your nearest relative, or the fiduciary in your will. And they need to have an opportunity to look into it and say, wait a minute, that will doesn't look good. Or you left out relative, cousin Sam, who's, part of your intestate distributees. So having that family tree can save thousands and thousands of dollars on having to hire a genealogist to track down your relatives.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the things, when I was in the surrogates court, we had kinship hearings, and you'd literally have to prove who was on each side of the family through genealogists, census records, going back on boats, having taken people over. It can get daunting. So having that information and their contact information is great.
So that's the 4th step. What's the final step?
Communicate. You're going to hear that more than once here. communicate. You really need to tell the people who are in your life, or the important people, trusted people, where that information is. If your binder is under your bed or in your night table, let people know where that is, because the best plan cannot be executed if nobody knows about it. And it might be that your will is probated and your relatives have struggled through finding everything. And then they find this great binder and, wouldn't that have been nice? So let people know where everything is. Because, it's hard enough when someone you love dies, dealing with everything. So this makes it a little easier for them to do.
And so we all know that proper planning, whether it's having life insurance, having the important documents like your will, a trust, and some of the other things you'll talk about, like having that in place before you need it really reduces the stress that family members go through when events like this happen. So we all know it. We know it, but we don't do it. So, I mean, part of this is your industry, because there are different attorneys that focus on different things. So one of your specialties is estate planning or estate administration.
Correct.
Which is, explain that to us. What is estate administration versus estate planning, and what most attorneys are doing?
Sure. So estate planning is the process of making those documents that will tell others what you want to do with your assets. Who do you want them to go to? Whether it's in a trust or a will, it's going to say, I want this watch to go to my son, and I want this necklace to go to my daughter, and I want this item of memento or painting to go there. And then I want to make this donation to charity, and then I want to leave all my estate to my spouse and kids. So all of that is estate planning. It's where do you want to leave your assets? Once you've done that, when someone dies, you have to administer the estate, and nobody can be appointed to administer the estate without a court process. So you're going to have to go to the surrogate or probate court, and if there's a will, you present the original, and the court will sort of run through some paces, make sure that everyone who is entitled to know about this proposed estate administration has notice and an opportunity to be heard. And then the will would be admitted to probate. At that point, you step in as the fiduciary, you step into the shoes of the decedent, and you do everything that they would do in order to make that will an actual living document. So you would go and open a bank account, which would be a specific estate bank account, collect all of the assets, and then distribute the assets. But those assets that you're collecting are the probate assets. And there's a distinction between probate and non-probate. And we'll talk about that in a little bit in alternatives to estate planning. So that's what we mean by administration. And obviously, if there's no will, it would be an intestate administration, but it's very much the same process. Somebody needs to be appointed to step into the decedent's shoes, collect those assets, and distribute them. In this case of intestacy, it would be according to the statute of your state as to who gets what.
Okay, so I'm sure that people are listening going, man, that sounds like a lot. And
it's why we exist. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of phone calls and providing documents.
Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to take us through a process, and I want you to accomplish almost 3 things with us. Number one, there's probably a lot of misconceptions out there. And so from your experience, I want you to squash any myths that you see or that you know of. Number two, how do you simplify this process? Because one of the myths is that this is only for people who are very wealthy, but everybody has stuff, but not everybody has money to go through all of this stuff. So show us certain options and strategies to mitigate the cost for going through it, and maybe some resources that are out there. So I'm just going to ask you to lead us through this.
Okay, well, the myth that only wealthy people need a will is exactly that. It's a myth. And I will say this slowly. Every parent needs a will. Every parent needs a will. And it is for the reason that I said earlier, you do not want your assets to be locked up so that your spouse or partner or whoever is taking care of your children doesn't have those assets as a resource. So a simple will with what's called a trust for minors or a continuing trust allows you to name someone, usually the same person you would name as a guardian, to take control of those assets and use their own discretion instead of the judge's discretion as to how that money should be spent. So that's one thing. One thing I want to mention at the same time, so I mentioned probate and non-probate assets. There are certain assets that don't pass through probate. And two of those assets are life insurance and IRAs or 401ks or any kind of retirement plans. And the reason why they don't go through probate is because those are contracts. So you have a contract with your life insurance company, and it's not your money, it's the company's money. So when they pay out, they're going to pay out to the beneficiary on that insurance policy. Same with retirement benefits. Many of them are governed by ERISA, and they have strict things on who can be a beneficiary. So those are not going to go through your estate. But if you have children and you have those kinds of assets, you're going to run it and you leave your child as a beneficiary of your life insurance or your IRA, you're going to have the same problem. That money is going to your child. So in that case, when you have minors, if you have enough assets in life insurance or an IRA or other retirement funds that you're concerned about, consult an accountant and say, what's the upside of leaving things the way they are? And in that case, for IRAs, you can roll them over and take distributions out over time. But maybe it's more important for you that your guardian has ready access to those funds, in which case you'd want to name your estate as your beneficiary and have that money flow through your will and have it go into this trust for your minor children. So that's just something. Go ahead.
So it could be your estate, and like you said, if your estate or your will has a testamentary trust, or you can have it go directly to a trust, possibly. You have choices.
Absolutely. So life insurance trusts, you're now talking about advanced estate planning. If you have a lot of money, you're going to put your life insurance in a trust that takes it out of your estate for tax purposes. But
so what do you advise someone who says this? Well, my cousin Louis will take care of my kids, so why don't I just give my money to my cousin Louis?
Well, is your cousin Louis married? Does he have good credit? Has he ever gotten into an accident? If you leave that money to your cousin Louis, that money could be subject to a divorce and half the money's gone. That subject could be debts that cousin Louis didn't take care of. And there's no control factor. So basically what a trust is the concept is, I am giving you my money and you are going to take care of that money and invest it wisely, or at least hire someone to invest it wisely.
Yeah.
And you're going to use it for the benefit of whoever the beneficiary is, in this case, my children. And if you don't, my children, when they reach the age of majority, can request an accounting. And you will have to show that you have used the money for my benefit and not yours.
And I think that's interesting because even though the intention of Cousin Louis and your intention,
you could have the best intentions. He could be as honest as anything, and someone slips and falls in front of Cousin Louis's house and, has a judgment that insurance doesn't cover, and Cousin Louis's assets are...
Because legally, you're giving the money to Cousin Louis, not your kids.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And also, if Cousin Louis is not so honest,
right,
your kids have no recourse because that was a gift.
Mm-hmm.
You just gave. I mean, yes, you could, if it was in writing, dear Cousin Louis, please take this money and use it for the kids' education, whatever. Most of the time, you don't have that on a piece of paper. If you had it on a piece of paper, then you could say, okay, there's lots of legal theories where I gave you made a promise to do this and you haven't, but it's much more headache, and it's a lawsuit. It's a lawsuit that some people can't afford to bring. So it's much better to take care of it in the planning stage and to do it the right way.
Okay, so we all know that it's very important to get legal, competent advice around these matters so that you're not guessing and making mistakes. But you also have to realize that there are some people who may not be able to afford an attorney.
100%.
There's a ton of resources out there. So how do you advise people about where to go to get things based on their economic status?
So the nice thing about living in the technology age is that if you're watching this, you're already interested in estate planning. And if you've made it this far, you're really invested in estate planning. So use the resource that's right at your fingertips. There are tons of websites that have investment information, but that also have estate planning information. Nolo.com was one of the first legal resources before Rocket Lawyer and LegalZoom came out. And they have questions and answers and frequently asked questions. AARP has a downloadable estate planning kit, and you do not have to be a member and 65 and over to obtain this. You can simply read up at the library. At one point, I really had an interest in determining whether non-lawyer wills were good enough. And so I went out and got Estate Planning for Dummies. And I read through it and said, if I were not an attorney, would this give me information that I needed? And the answer is absolutely. It explains trusts. It explains wills in enough way that you can then say, okay, I can use now one of those online resources like Nolo or LegalZoom, Rocket Lawyer, and maybe make a will that gets enough of what I need done without messing up. Now, if your estate has, real property and lots of complicated assets, you're going to really want to do a lot of reading before you take that on by yourself. But if you're talking about, as I said, a will with a trust for minors, that's doable on your own. So once you've read up, you can then make a will through LegalZoom. As an attorney, a lot of people will say, no, not LegalZoom. But when you're talking about the cost barrier, many firms, I was just on Reddit, and I participate in the estate planning subreddit, and someone asked, I got a quote for $1,000 to do a will for my partner and our children. Is that a lot? And someone said, that's less than what I would charge. And my response, because I'm cost conscious and I think this way, is, well, it depends what you have. You can do all this research yourself and do it for $50, $100 by doing it on LegalZoom. I don't really know how much LegalZoom costs for a will.
Right.
But you may be able to find an attorney who'll do it for $350, just the will. A lot of people try to, estate attorneys do a package. They do a will, the power of attorney, and the healthcare proxy and living will. But maybe you can do those on your own if you're working on a budget and be able to splurge on the will. So that's one way of doing it. There are also a lot of resources available for seniors and for people who have a lower economic class. So there's legal aid.
Okay.
In some places provide estate planning assistance. There's some bar associations that have pro bono services. And AARP has pro bono services that can help with estate planning for seniors. And another resource is your local Office of Aging for the seniors.
Okay.
Yeah, surprisingly, they do a lot. So not only do they help with the activities of daily living and how to get a health aid, they do have estate planning assistance in many cases. Not all, but it's worth looking into, because if you are in that 65 and up range, nothing like getting free legal advice when you can. So the other documents that you would need to complete this estate planning after you do a will is, the first is a power of attorney. And we talked about that before. So the power of attorney gives someone the right to act for you when you do not have capacity, whether you have gotten into an accident and are in the hospital, or whether you are in diminished capacity due to dementia or Alzheimer's, anything that would result in you not being able to take action with respect to your property. So you mentioned coming in and paying bills. The power of attorney gives someone the right to step into your shoes and pay your bills, write checks for you. They're going to have to sign their name power of attorney for you, but that document gives them the right to make financial decisions and also personal decisions. Mm-hmm. You can include gift giving to family, so that, on holidays, if you have kids, maybe your power of attorney, if you get sick in December, maybe they're going to use that to take some money out and buy your kids holiday presents. So there's two kinds of powers of attorney. One, the most common, is something that it takes effect immediately without any triggering clauses. So you sign it, you name the attorney in fact, and from that moment, that person has authority to act. Most of them don't, because you're not incapacitated, but they could. Some people are not comfortable with that. So there's something called a springing power of attorney. And what that is, it has a definition of when it takes effect. And usually that's when one or two doctors have determined that you don't have capacity. If you're in the hospital, easy enough, done. Attending and resident. Can you please sign this letter that says I don't have capacity, my dad doesn't have capacity, and this power of attorney now takes effect. So again, if you go to an attorney, these are part of a package, but they really don't have to be. And don't tell anyone I said this, but you can get a power of attorney for $5 at State and go to your bank and get it notarized. So these documents are really, really attainable.
And
the next document.
I would ask you this. So what you're saying, though, if you're going to go through the process of getting these documents and not going through an attorney, you really have to do the work, though, to know what you're getting. Like you were talking about, you've got to read, you got to educate yourself so that you understand the decisions and the implications that you're doing, that you're making.
Absolutely. Because again, like I said, some people are comfortable saying, I'm going to name my spouse as the attorney. In fact, I trust them with everything. Other people are like, I'd really rather this not take an effect now, and I'll keep my money, mine.
And so also, as an attorney, I'm sure you've seen people come into your office and maybe they're being coerced by elderly abuse, by their kids, forcing someone to do something. And then you'll be, okay, let's wait, let's stop and make sure things are being done properly.
So, yes, it's funny you mentioned that. I was on the phone with a client today who had that situation. And unfortunately, someone has taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from her. One of the things that attorneys do when they're sitting down with you to plan your estate is that they make sure that they're talking to you, not to you and your child, spouses, obviously, but not to you and your 30-year younger boyfriend. They're going to make sure that whoever took you to the office and whoever made the arrangements is not the person who's giving them the plan. And that's to take some of that influence out so that you make sure you're getting your directions right from the person. And you ask them all those questions. Is this what you want to do? Have you considered this, that, and the other? You're not going to have that if you do those documents yourself, obviously, but it's good to know what those documents mean.
Got it. Okay.
So the next document is a healthcare proxy, which is sometimes combined with an advance directive. Now, the healthcare proxy, it's sometimes called an advance directive. The healthcare proxy names someone like a power of attorney, but it's a medical power of attorney. So that person gets to make medical decisions for you when you can't. Most times you go into the hospital, if you're a spouse, you're making decisions for the person anyway. If you're a parent, you're making decisions. But here's something shocking that most people don't realize. When your child turns 18 and goes off to college, you're not automatically entitled to make decisions for that child without them signing power of attorney and a healthcare proxy. Now, again, most hospitals will say you're the parent, you get to make the decisions. But when we're talking about life and death decisions, that might not be the case. So anyone who's a parent of a college age or older child, go out and get yourself a healthcare proxy and make them sign it.
But to your point, also, when you look at any adult at the legal age, whether it's 18 or 21, they're now responsible and they probably need a full package, a will and these other documents that you're talking about, right?
Well, it depends. If you're talking about a single person on their own, could you get by without a will? Sure. And we're going to talk about ways that you can set up your assets to do that.
Okay.
Nice segue. So that's one thing. But in terms of the healthcare proxy, again, if you read through the instructions on the healthcare proxy, it's going to tell you what the options mean, whether you want artificial nutrition and hydration, whether you want pain relief. Everyone should get pain relief. What other special instructions do you want to give your healthcare proxy? You may have something, some religious beliefs that you want to put down, and make sure that there's someone advocating for you to make sure that those wishes are respected. All of that can be put in the healthcare proxy and living will. Okay. And for those documents, you can go to, I believe it's careorg.com. I think I've provided it in the resources.
Yeah, so links are going to be below for all of these things that you're referring to.
Perfect. So those documents are free of charge. Again, also on AARP's website, you can get those. And you can download them and complete them following the instructions. They're very detailed instructions on how to do it. So I already covered flat fee wills.
You mentioned AARP a few times, and I
was very surprised.
Yeah, and I did some research too, because there is a personal estate planning course that they have, and there's a booklet, and you know they're able to see this on the screen. One is a lesson booklet that really talks about all of the things that they need to know about the documents that you mentioned, and the different considerations and the implications of the decisions. And then there's a record book that goes back to what we talked about in the very beginning about organizing yourself and not leaving a mess. And so it's really two things. It's really understanding what are the documents that are important to have, and what are the implications of your decisions, and then having your records organized so that people know where to go to get information and know how to administer your estate.
Absolutely. And surprisingly, and I was looking around at websites for free things because that's what I do. Don't tell any of my clients. And one of the things that's available online, there's Charles Schwab has an asset inventory. You don't have to be a Charles Schwab client. You just Google it, and you can find estate planning kits on Etsy. You can find binders on Amazon. There really are a lot of resources for inexpensive guides to the information you need to collect and gather. So that's really a nice thing.
Is available for someone to make their own personal decisions. But even if you use an attorney, having this information makes you more knowledgeable when you're working with a professional.
It not only makes you more knowledgeable, it makes the process way less expensive. If you're going to an attorney who is charging by the hour, whether it is estate planning or estate administration, if you come in organized and say, here are all of my assets, and here's what I want to do, here's the name of the person that I want as my executor and a backup, my successor executor, here's the person I want to name as my guardian and a backup guardian, here's the person I want as my trustee, maybe the same person as the guardian, but if the guardian is not good with money or you want a backup, maybe the trustee is someone different than the guardian.
Right on.
So all of this results in a streamlined process. If you come in for an estate administration and say, I don't know what those assets were, I'm going to have to hunt them down. And that means I'm going to be searching Social Security. I'm going to be looking at unclaimed funds. I'm going to be asking you to come in and piecemeal. You're going to be bringing me statements that come in during the month. And all of that is work that I have to do instead of having all of that information right at my fingertips. I have one client that gave me an Excel spreadsheet, and it was beautiful. It had debts and credit cards under one tab, assets under another, life insurance, beneficiaries' names. It really makes a difference.
So it goes back to what we talked about, how organizing your life can reduce the mess your loved ones have to go through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
what other documents, have you talked about all of the other documents that are part of the estate planning package?
I believe so. I didn't really talk extensively about a trust.
Okay.
So trusts are very, very useful if you want to avoid probate.
Mm-hmm.
If you have enough assets to be planning at a slightly higher level than just going through and getting a legal Zoom will, one of the things you might think of is, okay, well, let's say you have a property that you lease, and that's a source of income. A lot of people do that. Get a house, fix it up, lease it out, you have a monthly income. Well, what happens if someone trips and falls in that house and you have potential liability? What our firm does is we say, take that commercial property and put it into an LLC, limited liability company. That limits your liability. And then put that in a trust. The trust is like its own legal entity. So you have your property encased in an LLC, encased in a trust. And that the most that can happen is you're exposed to the value of that real property. The rest of your assets aren't exposed to whatever that claim might have been.
Okay.
So trusts can be used for asset protection, advanced planning, or as I said, if you want to avoid probate. And unfortunately, the pandemic has resulted in some ridiculous delays. In New York, Kings County is a year to get letters testamentary, a year to have all of your assets frozen where nobody can do anything with them. And that's a lot of time to be waiting. So some people choose to
avoid probate.
Yes. So
let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So one of the nice things about being knowledgeable in this area is that there's a lot of choice. As I said, for probate assets, those are assets that are in your name alone. I, Lori Perlman, am the owner of this bank account. And when I die, nobody can touch that bank account until somebody has stepped into my shoes. But there are other kinds of bank accounts and forms of ownership that completely bypass probate and result in property passing. The easiest one is joint property.
Okay.
Often spouses buy property together. They have something called tenants buy the entirety. But anytime you either have a piece of real property, a co-op, a bank account, you can put it in your name and another person's name. And what that does is there are certain laws that have developed that say, you know what, both of you own this property. And when one of you dies, the survivor can just show the death certificate and then that becomes their sole property. So that's a very nice, easy way between trusted individuals. And I say trusted individuals because the thing with joint ownership is you both own it now. So I could clean out that bank account because I'm entitled to access it at any time. So not everyone wants to do a joint bank account. But there's lots of other kinds of ways of transferring assets. So you can, again, for joint property, you can do this for financial institution accounts, for bank accounts, and for real property. Another way of doing this is transfer on death accounts. In New York, they used to be called Totten trust accounts. And what that does, it's basically naming a beneficiary on your bank account. It has no effect during your lifetime. You can revoke it and change it at any time. And that way, again, you've got your adult child living on their own. They've got a checking account, maybe a savings account. That's a perfect way to have those assets organized and name the parents, name the younger kids, whatever, as beneficiaries. For real property, there's two kinds of deeds. One is a transfer on death deed, which is the same thing. And that's not available in every state, but it is in most. So you would have to draft a deed, include that transfer on death, and then you record it in your county clerk's office. Again, that is revocable because you're the owner. You can just make another deed and say, I'm going to name someone else. The other thing is something called a ladybird deed. Now, a ladybird, this was, I think, named after Lady Bird Johnson. A ladybird deed is a transfer of what's called the remainder interest in your real property. What it does is it saves you, it preserves for you a lifetime ability to live in your real property, and you're transferring the rest to whoever's the next person that you want to receive the property. That's called reserving a life estate. A lot of people do this for Medicaid planning. So, to save the house so that Medicaid doesn't impose a lien on it, you transfer it before you apply for Medicaid. So those are a few things that you can do while you're alive to structure those assets in a way that they pass outside of probate. If you have missed something and you have something left and in your own name, your survivors can do some things, or there's some vehicles available to them to avoid probate. In some states, they have laws that basically assume that if there's $5,000, $10,000 in a bank account, you don't need to do anything to administer that. If that's the only assets in the estate, you can go in, the bank will give you an affidavit to fill out, and you fill out and say, I'm the surviving spouse. This is the only asset of the estate. There are no debts that are unpaid, and I can collect this money. That's not even small estate administration. It's sort of the exception to small estate administration. And that depends on the bank and the state that you live in. In New York, you can get $15,000 for heirs, but a spouse can get up to $30,000 from a bank because it's considered those takes care of the immediate needs until you go through probate. Another thing that you can do is the small estate administration. And I know a lot of attorneys say, small estate administration, it's such a headache. Well, it's a headache for attorneys because we're used to doing things a certain way. But when you consider that it costs maybe $5,000 to probate an estate, and a small estate affidavit in my jurisdiction costs $1, and the court clerks will help you fill out the forms. And if you have personal property of $50,000 or under, and I know in Chicago I think it's $100,000 or under. This is an absolute money saver on administering the estate. And again, you can ask for help. Many court clerks, they will not help attorneys because we're supposed to know what we're doing.
Right.
But they will help someone fill out these forms. And now you go back to all that planning that we did. What information are they going to be looking for in that form? They're going to be looking for your relatives, that family tree. They're going to be looking for debts. They're going to be looking for where are the assets. In New York, when you do a small estate, you get a certificate for each financial institution. So you need to get the balance of what's there. And all of that planning that you did plunks right into that form. And you've just saved yourself $5,000 to $7,000.
So when I'm listening to everything that you're saying, here's my summary right now. So number one is it is important to plan. That is so critically important, but people don't do it. And we say that we tend to plan our vacations more than we plan some of the other more important things in life, right?
Well, of course, because who wants to think about this? This is not a pleasant topic. If you're stepping into my office to do estate planning, you're probably going, all right, my mom made me do this.
I'll do it later.
Sibling made me do this. Or, yeah. But
so number one is planning. Then number two would be educate yourself. And some people think, look, I'm done with high school. I'm done reading books. Or even college, I'm not reading more books. But it's important that education is continuous. And when it comes to this, if we're not an attorney, we definitely need to put forth the effort in looking at resources that are available and educating ourselves, right?
Absolutely. But there are so many resources out there. Investopedia, Forbes, Fortune, New York Times. If you put estate planning tips, you may get videos. You don't want to read through all the stuff. You may be able to have videos on YouTube to help you
Right.
figure out all this stuff and figure out the questions you need to ask before you start reading. So absolutely, this is doable. It's not easy. These are, in some cases, advanced concepts, but in some cases, really not. If you're, again, doing a simple will, estate planning for dummies, even dummies can do it.
And then the third thing is to organize. And your article really, again, that's why we're here. I read your article and then I reached out to you because your article really laid out exactly what is needed. So organizing yourself. And the last two things is it's important to have the documents, not just the will, but the other documents like your power of attorney, medical power of attorney, physician directive, also your guardianship if needed.
Absolutely. You can do a lifetime appointment of a guardian, or you can give someone power to do that.
Lastly, is do all you can, hopefully, to avoid probate.
Yes. I know.
Please do.
Absolutely. Especially now with these delays that are going on. It's important. It's important. Think about it. I've got clients who have millions of dollars that have been held up for months.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be nice to get it? That would be really nice. So, if people plan the right way, things can go much more smoothly.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say there's one more piece: communicate. Communicate to your loved ones where that information is, who the attorney is, where the will is, where the power of attorney is. All of that, all the planning doesn't go anywhere if nobody knows about it.
So you can't keep it to yourself, right? You got to let the important people know.
You got to sing it out.
That's a good add-on. And
to your trusted people.
Your trusted people, right?
Don't sing it out on.
We can talk forever on this, but if you were going to summarize what we talked about, we kind of almost just did, but if you want to add something else that's very important, given your experience and your expertise, what would you say?
If you have made it this far in this video, stop sitting around and do it. Just like Nike says, just do it. That's the most important thing, because if you are just planning, that's when catastrophes happen, unfortunately.
Wow. You said it. I'll tell you what, in our Empower Series program, we hope to accomplish 4 things in every program. We want to give people hope that whatever they envision, they can achieve. And secondly, we want to make sure that we're inspiring people to take action. Like you said, just do it. Just sitting here.
Just do it.
Going like, let me go make a sandwich doesn't work. You got to do the work, right?
Right.
Inspire you to take the work. And then education is critically important. There's resources out there. Read, educate yourself, reach out. There's information available. So education. Hopefully we've given people information that they didn't know before. And that's
absolutely
to add to it. The last piece is really connecting people to critical resources. So part of that will be the links below the video. It will be, connecting with AARP, other organizations. You mentioned Charles Schwab. There's a lot of information out there that people are just not aware of and they're not utilizing. So our goal is to connect people with those resources to help them take the next step towards their goal. That being said, you're one of those resources too.
Well, thank you.
So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, as you can see, let me see if I can use the correct hand. Right there is my law firm name, and you can Google me. I am a huge fan of looking people up and looking up resources and using the internet. So my name is Lori Perlman, and you can contact me through Falcon Rappaport Berkman on LinkedIn. I even have my own website out there that I haven't turned off yet. Any of those ways, you can get in touch with me. If you're at a higher level and are looking for a really good attorney, a lot of people say go to your state, county bar association, and you can absolutely get resources through there. There's an organization called ACTEC. It's the American College of Trust and Estate Counsel, and they are experts in the fields of estate planning.
Mm-hmm.
ACTEC.org, I believe, is the ACTEC. They also are an educational organization. Their information may be a little bit more dense, so you may have to do some research, primary research, and then dive into them. But you can also find an excellent attorney through them. Every attorney who's a member of ACTEC has been nominated and has continuing education that they do and seminars that they present, such as this. So that is another resource. And that's nationwide.
So you mentioned a couple of times that estates that are worth a certain amount may be able to use effectively trust. What would you say that a range or a benchmark is to where someone should consider a trust if their estate value is above a certain dollar amount?
I don't necessarily think it's above a certain dollar amount. I think part of it has to do with how much you have to spend on your estate planning. Because to my mind, in this environment where courts are slow to respond, I don't see why people would not have a revocable trust that could bypass probate. And you have a will that backs it up, that would scoop up anything that you might have left out and not transferred into the trust. Because again, you can have the trust. If you don't transfer your assets into the trust, that trust is worthless. So, yeah. So that's an important thing. But if you're talking, you have real property, you have a business, a commercial interest that you want to make sure is safe and continues. A lot of times you have real property that has different interests, and you may want to leave this and maintain it as a whole to create generation wealth. And that's something that a trust can do. So if you're talking about passing your wealth, not just to your kids, but to your grandchildren, a trust is a great vehicle to do that, because it can continue after your life, your children's life, your grandchildren's life. And that's the way people amass wealth. So that's something to consider if you have enough money to put in. I'm thinking, okay, I've got a nice house and I've got some investments. I don't have a trust. But, that's the shoemaker's kids, right? Have no shoes. So I'm trying to think, 5,000, 10,000, 5 million, 10 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. You should be considering how you can preserve it and pay the least amount of taxes on it.
Well, thank you so much. And like I said before, we can continue, but let this not be the end. I would say people should watch this video over and over again. There's jewels and nuggets in it. You might pick up something the second time that you didn't pick up the first time. That's why we're on YouTube. So
absolutely,
appreciation and gratitude for you spending a portion of your life pouring into the Empower Series community. Thank you.
I am so glad to be doing this. As I said, it's one of the things that inspires me. So I am very happy that you reached out, and think it was a little bit of fate that you reached out to someone who
and I would tell you, one of our speakers says that nothing of significance can ever be done alone. So the fact that we collaborated together, we are blessing many more lives than if we did not collaborate. So again, thank you. I appreciate
you're very welcome.
The knowledge and you poured into us. And I want to thank you for spending the time in a portion of your life to watch this video. Also, much appreciation goes to Comerica Bank for their long-term relationship with the Empower Series and all of their other resource partners and community partners in the markets that they serve. Thank AE Media Group for making us look good on social media. And most importantly, again, you are the Empower Series. So thank you for what you do. Do not keep this a secret. Share this with other people. And as Lori said, please communicate. Communicate to your loved ones, your family, and communicate to others, because there are people around you that the only way they're going to find out about the Empower Series or putting some plan together for their estate and not creating a mess for their loved ones is if you tell them. So until we meet again, be empowered and inspired to thrive. Thank you. Thank you for watching our Empower Series YouTube video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Remember to hit the subscribe button below, as well as the little button to be notified the next time we upload our video. Until then, stay connected with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your social media flavor is. Inspire the world to thrive. See you soon.